You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For over 40 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan Weitz.
Greetings. Excuse me. Keep that one in. Greetings and welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast. Today, John, Jason, and I are going to have our year-end Gab Fest, where we look back at the year in which we all went over the cliff in one way or another, and sometimes several cliffs simultaneously. Anyway, despite it all, we managed not only to keep the podcast going, but in my humble opinion, actually have a strong run of shows on a number of subjects. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're all going to be talking about some of our favorite subjects, some of our favorite episodes, and what was so special about them. Before we do that, though, one thing I want to say before we go on is that aside from the fact that I work with the tightest team in broadcasting, I want to give a really nice special public shout out to Jason Tables for managing to do a transition for us from that old wood table in our cozy Midtown studio to working from home. We couldn't have done it without Jay's troubleshooting skills. You wouldn't know it from listening to the edited shows, but there were a few occasions where signals were dropping mid-sentence, and a few times we had to restart altogether for one reason or another, and Jason bailed us out each and every time. If you think it's easy to record a show where I'm in a fictitious town in New Jersey, John's in Manhattan, and Jay is in Connecticut, and our guest is in Kenya or New Zealand, ooh, baby, somebody hold my coffee. You have no idea how much fun it could be. And John, I couldn't ask for a better producer and on-air co-pilot. Thank you so, so much. And you guys ain't bad as friends either. Anyway, all that said, John, how do you want to play it today?
I was thinking we run down, just kind of chronologically go through the episodes, not each and every one of them, but talk about the ones we like. I have a list in front of me here. And then at the end, we can each mention our favorite episodes and anything else that comes out. I have some statistics to kind of throw out for the listenership and the episodes that did really well, and we can talk about that too. So I'll just start off because I'm right here looking at Clyde Butcher, which was the first episode we did this year, and Clyde is that Everglades photographer. And the only reason I wanted to mention this is because it seems like forever ago, for sure. But at the same time, I was in Florida by myself, and I went into his studio just kind of off the cuff and asked him to do an interview, and he was great. And we just recorded it remotely, he and I, and we were able to use it for an episode. So I really like that. Next episode for that year is, we called it Space Odyssey, and it was photographing the James Webb Space Telescope with Chris Gunn. And I thought that was a really great episode too. Next one was with Olivia B. Jason organized that one, and that was a wonderful episode with her.
All the shows that you just listed don't even seem like they happened this year. I mean, they seem like so long ago.
Yeah.
It just seems like a different lifetime almost. It's crazy.
It was another lifetime ago.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the first 10 or 12 episodes of the year, and I'm looking at them here.
It was the good old days.
Yeah, it just really doesn't even register as this year. And then we had this, one of the ones that I really, really enjoyed this year was Sarah Bennett and Joseph Holmes, who were a husband and wife. They're not a team. They photograph totally separate things. Sarah works in prison reform, and Joseph is more of a street photographer, but that was a great episode too. Well, after that, we did one that was pretty interesting, I thought. We talked to Nick Moyer, who is an Australian news photographer, and that was about the Australian bushfires, which at the time was, right in the news. Again, something that seems so long ago, but
what was really interesting is that he got into how people protect their homes. Out there, they know how to wrap their houses probably, and they ride it out, which is bizarre, but that's what they do.
Yep. Yeah, no, that was an interesting episode. All right, well, moving forward then, a couple episodes. We had one that was titled Photography Has Nothing to Do with Cameras, and that was when we had Nancy Borowick and Adrian O'Hannesson back on the show. That was just a chat between the two of them, who are old friends and photographers whose lives have kind of paralleled each other in a strange
but they've
way.
also taken some bizarre twists that have very different, and
absolutely
from childbirth to plane crashes, and it's interesting to see how they reflected together as two old friends. And it was interesting also, just really great being able to reconnect with Adrian again, who has been our foreign correspondent, and to see that she's okay.
Yep. Well, after speaking with Nancy and Adrian, we had a pretty interesting conversation with Sherry Belafonte, which I'm a child of the 80s, and she was on magazine covers all over the place in the 80s. So the fact that she, was a supermodel and the daughter of Harry Belafonte and a photographer on her own. It was fun to just have her and chat for a while.
I found Shari to be just really very real and an honest, wonderful person. She had a great laugh, and I really personally enjoyed talking to her on the side about caring for our elder parents. In her case, her father, and in my case, my mom at the time. She was just real, and she was very comfortable in her skin, and there was just no attitude there. It was just very refreshing. It was a lot of fun, that show.
Yeah,
She was very cool and very, very down to earth for a famous person.
Yeah.
Totally. Next episode was with Sebastian Mayer and Iraq's first photo agency.
Yeah.
Again, that I really enjoyed that episode, and Sebastian was great to talk to. Who had basically spent the 2000s in Iraq, covering the war, but also then helping to set up a photo agency there. And the book that he made, it was called Under Every Yard of Sky. I think that was a great book. Something at the end of the episode, I want to talk about a few of the books that I have from this year.
Yeah.
But he was a great guest, and I look forward to catching up with him too. We followed that one with rock photography of the 60s. We had Amelia Davis, who was Jim Marshall's assistant and in charge of his archive, and also Elliot Landy on that show. So yeah, then we did the rock photography of the 60s and I think we all love that, talking about Jim Marshall's work. The next one, and this is one we should probably dwell on for a second, was the first all remote episode. And we recorded it, I think, on March 17th. So really just a couple days after we were in shutdown. And it was called and is called Photojournalists Covering the Coronavirus. And we gathered together 4 New York Times and Washington Post photographers just to talk about their early coverage of the virus in New York City and all that was going on. Anyway, a real good episode. Greg Gorman was next. Then we had Steve Winter, the Lion King, the real Lion King, real Tiger King. I'm sorry.
We actually skipped one. Ike and Tash.
Yes, we had Ike and Tash in there,
which was fun. That was a good show. They had terrific guests,
and they also spoke a little bit about the beginning of pandemic and how their wedding photography business was going to go. Then we had a nice remote conversation with Echo Ishan and
contemporary African photography. Yes,
right. Yeah, that was I think you liked that episode a lot, right, Alan? That was good.
I'm going to be talking about it. Yes.
Cool. After that, we spoke to Ray Collins in Australia, who does these incredible photographs of waves. And that was another really good episode. I enjoyed that conversation a lot. Food photography and food styling with Chelsea Kyle and Drew Ashiel. That was another interesting episode on just what it sounds like. Women drone photographers, kind of a weird episode in some way, but I enjoyed it. Next, we had Jeff Garland, the comedian and Leica shooter, and that, of course, was a really fun episode.
His opening line was one of my favorite lines of the year.
What was it?
He said, "You got a good broadcasting voice." Made my day.
Yeah, that's true.
I never got any work out of it, but it made my day.
Right. Yeah, no, it was a ton of fun to talk to him.
He was fun.
Just like you would imagine, I think. Then we had an optic preview with Lisa Langell and Pete McBride. And I really enjoyed that conversation with Lisa, especially. She was super nice and her way of, displaying photos. I think our listeners really enjoyed that. And Pete McBride's story about walking through the Grand Canyon was pretty nice. Then we had our Leica ambassadors, Craig Semetko and Ashley Stoll. I really enjoyed that one as well. And that was all kind of surrounding the Leica photo contest that we had running at the time, which also now seems like a long time ago.
Yeah. Wow. Yes.
Yeah. Saul Leiter Foundation. That was a great talk about Saul Leiter's work with Margit and Michael. And then I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. We had Dwayne Michaels, which I think we'll talk a little bit about later. Mm-hmm. He's obviously a kind of a legend, and it was great to be able to speak with him. We spoke with Cliff Hausner and Char Taylor from Pro Photo. Then we had Larry Letterman on talking about garden photography.
Garden photography, yeah.
Yeah, mm-hmm. He's another person who put out a book this year as garden portraits and, famous gigantic gardens of the rich and famous and some public gardens too. Then we had Julie Blackman on and Robert Mann. We talked about his gallery space and that.
And how galleries have been changing.
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting.
That was a very interesting show in that sense, because again, it's like, what was isn't anymore. It's all new, like everything else, and even the galleries had to change what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
I mean, yeah, the kind of that exodus from the Chelsea area back uptown was kind of happening before COVID, but it just kind of COVID just accelerated it.
Right, and now everything's by appointment, and just totally different for the galleries. I would say, living in Chelsea and having walked around a bit in September and October, it seemed for a bit that things were, almost back to normal for a little, but that's then again shut down. And Julie Blackman, her work was great. We didn't talk we did talk a lot about it. I thought that was a nice episode. The next one was with Alison Rossiter and Cameraless Photography. Alison is somebody I've spoken with since, and she put out a beautiful book. It was called Compendium, 1898 to 1919, and it's all photo paper from those years that I just mentioned. And she finds old photo paper, processes them, and displays them almost like sculpture. It's really interesting. Following up with that was Joan Lifton and Minor Matters Books. The founder, Michelle Dunn-Marsh, was on the show, and that was a really interesting chat with her. I think we'll talk a little bit about that later. Then an episode that we will definitely talk about later was called Alan's 10 Favorite Lenses. That was fun.
God, we have to talk about that?
Yeah, of course.
Didn't that do well, that episode?
Alan's 10, that's going to be part of our list of the 5 best performing episodes of the year. So, congratulations, Alan. Well done. Photografiska, we talked about the new museum. We had one of their directors on. Then we had Walter Jooss talking about his legendary sports career.
Yeah.
That was, for me, just a great episode to get. He's kind of not to say hero of mine, but a legend for sure. And I really love his work, and talking to him was fun. I think he's somebody you could do like a 3 or 4 hour episode with, and just kind of sit around and start spinning tales. Photo collecting with W.M. Bill Hunt, and he was selling his collection off at Christie's. Hope it went well. We had Peter Hurley talking about being a U.S. Sailing champ and his headshot business.
And he's very good at what he did. He took something that was like, who thought you could build a huge empire out of doing headshots? He did, and people are earning a living at it, and he's spreading the word, and he's got a good, friendly way about him. And he's a sailor. So how could you go wrong?
Well, for me, it was interesting to see how much time he does dedicate to sailing. I mean, that seems to be his, and I just give him all that credit in the world for, kind of realizing what you love and making the effort and the time to do it. I mean, he's competing on like the international level as in the seniors category. So
yeah.
That's great. Then we had a great episode with Early Hudnall Jr. I know we're going to talk about that later, so we'll leave it for that. Early's a Houston-based photographer. Then we did an episode called Additional Revenue with Sam Hurd. I really enjoyed talking with Sam. He's a wedding photographer primarily, but he also teaches, and he just talked about how he makes extra revenue on Patreon and on selling stock photos and presets. So that was interesting. Then we came back and did a follow-up on the Covering COVID episode. We spoke with 2 of the photographers who we had spoken with earlier in March. Again, really interesting. Sarah Blesner and Desiree Rios, who were just doing great work around the city all through this pandemic. Followed up with Night Photography in the Rockies with Rachel Jones-Ross. And we had Amy Vitale on the show talking about Prints for Nature, which I think that sale is still ongoing if you want to help Conservation International and buy a beautiful print. We had Salwin Georges talking about the presidential campaign and shooting both the Biden and Trump campaigns.
And even though the campaign was over, he's still working on the campaign because it never ended. It only ended, yesterday?
Yeah, all right.
I forgot about that one when I was writing down my favorite shows. That was a great show, and he's
very good guest. He's excellent. Good photographer and a great guest.
His work is incredible. That's the second time we've had him on, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Friend of the show, as they say. And
we met him at Eddie Adams when he was just getting a start in the industry.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Then we are up to our current episode, which is Cameras of the Year 2020. Always a well-performing episode. and we'll see how it does this year. I'll mention 2 more because we've already recorded them. Hunting, Fishing, and Finding Your Voice with Matthew Franklin Carter, talking about shooting down in South Carolina, racetracks and hunting and fishing. And then the episode that I know we're all excited about because we just recorded Queen's Quarantine with Neil Kramer. And that takes us right up to the present.
Yeah, I was going to talk about the Queen's Quarantine with Neil Kramer. Again, our listeners haven't heard it yet. It's going up soon, but it's a great, great episode. We're going to come back and talk to that. But first, we're going to take a short break and come back and talk about our favorite episodes and favorite books and a few other odds and ends for the end of the year. Stay tuned.
We hope you're enjoying this edition of the B&H Photography Podcast. The best way to support the show is by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. For links to gear and more information on today's guests, check out the show notes in your podcast app or visit our homepage on the B&H Explorer website and join the B&H Photography Podcast Facebook group. And now, back to the show.
Okay, we are back. Now we're going to talk about a little bit more detail about, we each chose about 3 or so of our favorite episodes of the past year, and we just figured we'd each mention them. Again, it's kind of hard. I chose about 12 or 15 originally. I kind of narrowed them down here a little bit. So here's what I'm going to put out there. The first one on is one of the first shows that we did, and that was the Space Odyssey, photographing the James Webb Space Telescope with Chris Gunn. I really, really like that. First of all, it's an amazing long-term project. It's something that only happens once. It's a real wonderful document and a great story. I really, really enjoyed that one. That was really tremendous.
Yeah, Alan, I agree on that episode. I thought it was really interesting, and the project itself is amazing. And the one thing that always stuck with me from that is that here's somebody who has maybe the greatest photo job imaginable, if that's your thing. I mean, he shows up every day. He gets a regular paycheck. He can choose whatever gear he wants and just do these insane photographs of this incredible machine. Yeah.
It's something very cool about being able to ask people to like move around huge pieces of complex machinery just so you could take a picture. That's power. I love it.
Yeah.
Next on my list here was rock photography of the 60s, Jim Marshall, presented by Amelia Davis, who's wonderful, wonderful to speak to, and Elliot Landy. Now, I came of age in the 60s, and these guys illustrated my journey in many ways. I know these photographs from back in the day, and revisiting them in such depth from unique perspectives adds so much more to the experience of seeing them again after decades. And what's startling to me is how distant so many of these images have become. I mean, I clearly remember these pictures from 50 years ago or more, and all of a sudden they're historical documents of a rapidly vanishing past. And Jim Marshall, I really didn't know much about him as a person. That's a whole other subject. He was a character and a half. What's especially funny is how often I now notice him in the backgrounds of other people's photographs and in documentaries shot back in that time. He just shows up all over the place. He's bouncing around in there. And again, it's made me look at these pictures again and really, really appreciate them that much more. Greg Gorman, Lighting Up Hollywood. I love talking with Greg. He's been around so long. He just says what he thinks based on the people he's both photographed and befriended and what he's seen, where he's been, and who he was with when he was there. The guy's just been all around and great stories, and he has a great sense of humor to go along with it. And he knows his stuff. And the best thing was when towards the end of the show, I said, hey, listen, you know a lot of really cool people. Anybody you can get on the show for us? And he just pulled out his phone and called Shari Belafonte. And 2 weeks later, she was sitting with us at the show. How much better does it get than that? Seriously. I mean, we were giggling away. That was just a wonderful, wonderful. We had to cut out a lot of stuff. It was that good.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun. I'd love to talk to him again. He was great, and I think he had another book come out. He's got books coming out all the time. I mean,
yes.
Think of a famous Hollywood photo from the 80s or 90s. He probably took it, right?
Oh yeah, no, he knows everybody, and again, and some of the stories he had to go along with were just wonderful. Last show I'm going to throw out there, and again, it was really kind of hard to knock him down, but contemporary African photography with Ekau Ishun. His book Africa State of Mind is absolutely wonderful. His book opened my eyes to a group of photographers with an aesthetic I found to be wonderful, amazingly creative. And lastly, I'm going to throw in Wendy Ewald, Photo Education in Kentucky. Her commitment to this long-term project, which you already mentioned, John, is amazing. What she's managed to accomplish with very little in the way of grants and resources, she was able to give students so much. And to this day, it's still happening. So that's my list.
All right. Yeah, I mean, just thinking about it, I mean, not to pat ourselves on the shoulder too much, but I mean, Greg Gorman, Wendy Ewald, Clyde Butcher,
Early Hudnall.
Early Hudnall,
who I highlight. I didn't mention
Dwayne
it, but
Michaels. I mean, these are kind of legends in their field. They're people that have worked their whole lives and just have an incredible body of work to show for it and deserve.
Walter Yost,
Walter Yost, yeah, totally, another one. I mean, sure. Anyway, all right, Jason, your turn. Why don't you tell us a couple of your favorites?
Okay, my first was Protect Your Copyright with David Deal Part 2.
Really?
It's the second time.
Okay.
I just love how that guy advocates for photographers. It's something that every photographer should know about.
Nice, yeah.
It's with the way we have with social media and pictures being so available and so public. It's just I just think he's a good person to know of because people do get screwed every day.
Yeah.
He's somebody that actually advocates for artists and photographers. So
for sure.
The next one that was on my list is Early Hudnall Jr. He's a photographer that's covered these historical African-American neighborhoods in Houston's 3rd and 4th Ward. And he was just a fantastic guest. Some of the best portrait work I think I've ever seen. I mean, he's just fantastic. And he had so many great stories and so many great tips. And he just seems to, he prints all his own stuff. He's really just one with photography, the guy. And, I'd never heard of him until recently because he had photographed George Floyd's neighborhood growing up. He grew up in this area in Houston. And they wrote about him in Time. And that was the first I'd heard about him. I don't know about either of you guys, but I'll tell you that I really feel like, he's, seems to be an underappreciated photographer in my view. Next one I had was Dwayne Michaels. I just love his work. I was, familiar with the sequence stuff before the show, and then to hear him talk about it was very cool. And he's just such a different kind of photographer, such a unique voice. And but he was a real person. He I don't know. He's a little prickly, and I kind of like that. It was a little refreshing. We don't really have too many prickly guests. I mean, everyone's so
the hosts take care of that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think Alan's the most prickly person we have. But
and I'm not giving that position up ever.
Yeah, but I just thought it was real, and he just seemed like a real person with his own thoughts and some grievances and so forth. And I thought that was it actually resonated with me in some way, just because I really felt like that's how he feels. Yeah. He wasn't sugarcoating anything.
Yeah, no bullshit. Yeah, I totally felt that way too. I mean,
it kind of reminded me a little bit of like the Brit pop bands and like and like in the grunge era, like when you had Kurt Cobain like publicly dismissing Axl Rose and stuff like that. This kind of competitive kind of behavior between really talented people, I've always found really entertaining. You know what I mean? But that's just I separate the work from all of that, though. I think his work is fantastic, and I just love it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you in general. It was refreshing, and it's good to hear somebody just state their opinions, and he had every right to do it. His work speaks for itself, and he's continuing to make work, new and contemporary stuff. So it's just great. The definition of an artist for sure. Cool. So some good choices. Any more?
I may have one more, and that was, and I hope I'm not taking one of yours.
No, it's okay,
John. But it was the coronavirus photographers. I mean, I assume someone else was going to pick that. Were you going to pick that? If you're going to pick that, I won't talk about it.
I was going to pick it, but
hey, listen, it's okay if we all share a like of a common episode. That's something for the episode.
Yeah.
Oh, we can have an overlap. Okay.
Yeah, why not?
I think I like it for a few reasons. One, it was it was difficult. I mean, we had a lot of guests. We had a lot of technical problems. We were just getting going with this thing, and it was very stressful. But I loved how it came out. And, hearing these brave photographers that make their living, risking their lives to tell these stories is always... It's always great to hear. I mean, we do a lot of the, if we have, conflict photographers on, we hear a lot of that. But something was a little bit more visceral to it for me this time because we're all going through it. I mean,
it's not a war going on the other side of the planet that, you watch on the TV a little bit and then you change the channel when something good comes on. It's happening around us and you can't get away from it. That's the difference.
Exactly. And
it's on our turf.
And these are the guys that are taking the pictures that we see when we open up, the news section on our phones or open up the paper or whatever. I mean, so that was great. And it would really hit home. And that's my last choice.
Great. Okay. Well, yeah, I was definitely going to put that on my list and for all the reasons you said, so I won't even need to say anything. I'll just mention the names of the photographers who we had on and thank them. It was Sarah Blessner, who joined us for the follow-up, and Desiree Rios, who also joined us for the follow-up. And then we also had John Taggart and Andrew Sang. And just to give a shout out to Andrew, and actually, I think Sarah also had photos chosen in New York Times Photos of the Year section, and that just came out late last week. So I agree. Totally great episode in terms of putting it together in that time crunch at that moment, all remotely. Shout out to you, Jay, for putting that together, and again to the photographers who were able to share.
Well, shout out to you for finding all those photographers in that time frame.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks.
That was incredible.
Thank you. Yeah.
I mean, it couldn't have been more timely than that.
Yeah. The four of them were real honest with us. That's the thing I loved. They were just thrown into this. They were figuring it out like everybody else. And listening to that episode now, you can hear some of the fear, the uncertainty, but also, like you said, the courage and the willingness to kind of want to get in there and make images, which they all went on to do. So kudos to them.
Go follow Andrew Sang on Instagram because his work is great. He's been on the show several times, but his personal work is also great.
Mm-hmm. Now that you mentioned one of mine, I'm going to pick a third one, but I don't know which one that's going to be yet. But I will mention another of my favorites, which is it was called I don't remember exactly what we called it, but it was with Aaron Turner and Leila Amatalu Bahrain, who we had on late in the summer. Leila had just come back from Minneapolis, where she had been covering the uprisings there. And Aaron runs the Photographers of Color, which is an Instagram site as well as an archive at the University of Arkansas, I believe. Anyway,
that was really good.
Yeah, no, they both had. I thought the two voices together were really good. Aaron kind of spoke about his work putting together photographers of color, both historical and contemporary, and giving them a place and a platform. And Leila spoke about her work in Brooklyn and in Minneapolis during the uprisings and during COVID, and her work is just incredible from that period of time. So I would put that as a favorite, as well as the photojournalist covering coronavirus. But maybe for a third, I enjoyed talking about Saul Leiter. That was kind of interesting. And I also enjoyed talking with Alison Rossiter, which is a strange episode for us because cameraless photography,
I'm surprised you didn't pick Walter Yost. I know you love his work and, sports photography is kind of your thing. And.
Well, yeah, I totally. I was always somebody I really wanted to speak to over the years, and it was a good episode. But I just feel like he's somebody I would want to talk to for 4 hours, and just really ask him sports stories. And for that episode, I really couldn't. You can't really dig deep into the sports side of it because we need to talk about photography. So, that would have been a type of episode I'd love to talk to about with him. However, I did enjoy it. Instead of giving a third favorite, what I think I'm going to do is mention some of the books that we had this year, because this was kind of a year where we talked to a lot of authors and people and photographers who had books that were coming out. And there's also a couple other ones I'm going to mention quickly, but Alan already mentioned Africa State of Mind, the Eco Eshan book, which I thought was great. Alison Rossiter put out a book, Compendium, which I would definitely say check out if you're into that kind of work. And then we had Minor Matters books, and we talked about a book from Charles Harbut called The Unconcerned Photographer, something I would recommend for people. We didn't have this on the show because we couldn't figure it out in time, but there was this great book from Thames and Hudson by Bill Brandt, or a book of Bill Brandt's work. And I know, Alan, we really wanted to cover this year, but we didn't have a chance to. But the book itself is beautiful, and his work is just, best out there, really. Also, if you guys remember that guy Ashok Sinha we had a couple years ago.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we had a really great episode with him, and his book finally came out. It's called Gas and Glamour, and it's Los Angeles architecture from mid-century, and it's like car culture seen through the eyes of an architect, and it's really interesting.
That's on my list for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Gas and Glamour.
We saw some of the photos when we had him on. Right?
Yeah, he was working on that project back then, and I guess it finally came to fruition. Also, there's another photographer named Niels Thun. He's a Norwegian photographer who we were going to also have on the show, but we couldn't work it out. And he sent me a couple of his books, and the new one is called Monastic Communities of Jerusalem, and it's insane. I mean, it's like a book of paintings. It's this giant book, large format photography taken in monasteries around the world. It's just a beautiful book, and I would recommend if you can find it. The guy's name is Niels Thun. But yeah, that was it. A lot of great episodes this year. I want to throw out to you guys the ones that perform the best, and then we can talk about those real quickly. But to some other statistics, we did 48 new episodes this year. We put out 3 encore episodes, and one week we went dark intentionally. So, we kept it going throughout 2020. We had, our usual schedule, and our numbers were basically a little better this year than they were last year. Believe it or not. Currently, I just checked, and we're 5th on the iTunes visual arts chart. So we're doing well there. And our best performing episodes. You guys want to guess maybe what were the best performing episodes of the year?
The equipment stuff always do. I know, like Hammers of the Year 2020, no doubt, did well. Rumor has it that Al's 10 favorite lenses did well. I got a little note about that. Again, but equipment stuff seems to do well on our show.
Yeah, that's and in this case, it's true. That was the number one episode of the year. Came from the beginning of the year. New gear announcements from Depth of Field. Kind of a boring title, but we had members of various camera reps companies were there talking about their stuff, and it does well. The next 4 I'm going to give you really quickly, and surprisingly, the next one is photography has nothing to do with cameras. That was the episode with Adrian and Nancy, and it also from the beginning of the year.
That was the 3rd one down?
No, the 2nd one down.
Interesting. Okay.
That was the second best performing episode of the year.
So the top one was New Gear from
Depth of Field.
From Depth of Field.
Yeah.
The next one down was photography is not about taking pictures, or what?
Yeah, photography has nothing to do with cameras. Yeah.
It has nothing to do with taking pictures. Yeah, it's nothing. It's called audio recordings.
It's a little surprising to me too, but there's some things to maybe consider. They both came one after the other in February. Maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. It could be, the gear episodes often do well. Maybe the title of the other one. I don't know. There is a trend, the numbers took a hit in March and April, clearly, but also episodes from later in the year haven't caught up yet. But, I kind of cook that into the numbers to figure out what looked like the 5 strongest episodes. And New Gear, photography has nothing to do with cameras. Then number 3, Alan's top 10 lenses. Then number 4, the Ray Collins episode, the Australian photographer who shoots in the waves. And that was a great episode. I really enjoyed that one. And his work is just, there's nobody like that. I don't think I've ever seen anybody's work where, these close-up portraits, really, of waves. It's just beautiful work. And he was a really nice guy, and the conversation went well.
I thought Ray Collins was great. His work is incredible. To our listeners who haven't heard that show, take a listen and check this guy's work out, because he makes these waves look like sculptures, and what he does with light, it's just unbelievable. I don't know how he does it, and his post-processing is great too.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I guess he still is a surf photographer, but he started shooting surfers. Before that, he worked in a coal mine, right? I mean, yeah, interesting life.
Yes.
So Ray Collins, and then the last episode in terms of numbers that did really well was an encore episode, which is a little disappointing, I guess, but it just speaks to the popularity of this guest. And to see if you guys can guess who it was.
It was my 10 favorite lenses again.
Yeah, you can't get enough of you.
Was it Mark Mann?
It was, yeah, Mark Mann. Yeah.
Yeah, people. He's got a rabid following.
Yeah, no, he's a wonderful guest, terrific guest.
This one episode released in 2 different years has done incredibly well twice. Yeah. So what do you know? So that's the top 5 episodes of the year.
We were talking about books, and I don't want the show to end before I mention a couple of books that got me this year. One of them has nothing to do with any of the shows we did. It's called NASA, 50 Years in Space from Project Mercury to the Mars Rovers. It's a Taschen book. It weighs like 14 pounds. It comes in a box with a handle. But it's a complete history of everything that's gone on from NASA from their archives. And it's phenomenal. Some of the early black and white from the 50s and 60s is just truly monumental. A lot of it, I would guess, was 4, 5, and 8 by 10, easily medium format. And it documents that everything through what's going on today. And one of the strongest photographs in it is a double-page truck of one of the last shuttles being driven, essentially, or escorted through the streets of Los Angeles onto its final resting spot. And it was shot with like a 500 millimeter lens from God knows how far away. But you have about a mile of Los Angeles streets and stores and signs and everything else and zillions of people with this space shuttle being slowly crawling down this boulevard, this avenue, middle of Los Angeles. And first of all, it's a striking picture to look at. The dynamics of it are just amazing. But it also is kind of bizarre in the sense that here you have something that was state-of-the-art technology. This was like everything humanity could throw together and get up into space. And over 120-something flights, there were a couple of casualties, but far less than they actually thought they would be. And here you have this monstrous piece of technology being carted down the street like a circus bear on its way to its last exhibit. And there's something kind of sad about it, but also something wonderful about it. And another book I want to mention is Stephen Wilkes' Day to Night. We went to the opening of his show before the curtains came down on Manhattan. I purchased the book there. Stephen signed it. It's a huge book. It's phenomenal. It takes all of his day-to-night pictures, dissects them. Some of them you could open up to gatefolds of details in it. It's the kind of book you could spend days with. And we went to see the kids for a weekend. And one of my grandkids, a 9-year-old granddaughter, was up till like 2 a.m. looking at the book. She couldn't put it down. She was fascinated by it. And one book just showed up this morning at my door, and I went out to put out the recycling. And it's from Thames and Hudson. We've been getting a lot of interesting book leads from them. This one's called Todd Webb in Africa, Outside the Frame. And Todd Webb was a photographer, New York and Paris, France, and some of the Midwest stuff. But in 1958, the United Nations Department of Public Information sent him to document the progress of industry, technology, and life in general in Africa. And he spent several months in Togo, Ghana, Sudan, Somalia, Tanzania, Zanzibar, Kenya, and what now are known as Malawi, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. And 150 photographs and what looks like a lot of amazing text of a tremendous document and again, these things don't exist anymore. These countries and cities have gone through amazing transitions, if not revolutions. But he caught it in 1958 for a few months, and the pictures are stunning, and it's just a great document. And maybe we'll do a show on this one.
Yeah, I saw that book, or I read about that book. It's interesting. Haven't seen it yet, though.
So, Alan, you were kind enough to pay such nice compliments to John and I at the beginning of the show, but I don't think we say it enough. Having you on the show and, with your endless photography knowledge, endless camera knowledge, that Alan White's signature wit, but
and the broadcaster's voice.
And the great voice, but also the the ability to keep a conversation going, and keep it interesting, and keep it lively. We couldn't, obviously could not do the show without you. So thank you.
We're a team, and we work beautifully together, and that's the whole thing, and that's the takeaway from all of this stuff. We all do our job, and we do it as best as we can because we love what we're doing.
I feel very fortunate to work with both you guys. So
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's all mutual.
Yeah, echoed that too, Alan. What Jason said.
Thank you.
So. All right, let's wrap up 2020 and look forward to 2021. I already have some shows scheduled, and hopefully just I guess back to normal, right? We'll see.
Yeah, hopefully. Anyway, so that's a wrap up of 2020, a year that we will not forget, even though we'd like to, and hopefully that 2021 will bring some brighter light to us all and. Plenty of more podcasts that we're looking forward to do. And speaking of which, if you'd like to get a heads up the moment a new B&H photography podcast goes live, here's what you got to do. You just go over to wherever you get your podcast fix, type B&H Photography Podcast into the search field, and boom, you can exhale. You remember. You can also find this on the B&H Explorer website and on the B&H Photography Podcast Facebook group page. All that said, I'm Alan White, and on behalf of John Harris and Jason Tables, be safe, be smart, and make the best of this holiday season. Till next time, take care, and thanks for joining us.